First off, let me say, I know it's going for 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday, October 24th, and I'm just now sitting down to film today. And I want to apologize also for only putting out, I think, 3 videos yesterday. I typically put out somewhere between 5 and 8 every single day, 7 days a week. And I took some time yesterday. First of all, I had an Indivisible meeting. There was also the Indivisible What's the Plan call that happened yesterday. I had parenting things I had to do. And then I had a couple of other calls and chats that I needed to be involved in around local organizing. And I was just like, okay, this is a day where I can't do my job as much because I need to spend my time in these other areas. I also took some time last night. I came home from my Indivisible meeting, which just like gets me really pumped up and like, let's go. There's lots of things to do. Let's go. And I want to talk about some of our action items in videos later today. But I came home from that meeting. It was going for 10 o'clock at night, and first time I'd seen my husband all day. And I was like, I need to film some more. I have more things that I need to talk about. I only put out 3 videos, and my queue of topics is getting longer and longer and longer, right? It's once again back up to like 49, 50 topics. There's just so many resources that I want to share and so many things that I want to discuss. And, I actually decided, obviously, because I didn't put out any videos, I actually decided not to do that. I have been reading through Timothy Snyder's book on freedom. I know a lot of people have read on tyranny. Y'all, please read on freedom. So I decided last night to prioritize not making some more content, but instead to keep reading through Tim Snyder's book. So in Tim's book, he talks about the different forms of freedom, and I just finished the chapter on solidarity, and I want to share just a little bit of it with you, because I've really been thinking about how we on the left are so prone to I like to call it denominationalism, because it reminds me very much of my evangelical background, or I should say my Reformed Calvinist background, but the way that Protestants in the United States in particular love to split off, and we are constantly forming smaller and smaller tents. We are segregating ourselves over the smallest minutia of doctrine, refusing to associate with other people that we don't consider theologically accurate, and we fear that we'll be contaminated by them. We fear that our very souls are imperiled because they might have wrong theology. So common, and especially for somebody like me who comes from a Reformed tradition, even though I've been out of the church for a really, really long time. Our corner of Christendom is very prone to that, like, oh gosh, I can't associate with you because, you might be an Arminian. You don't embrace all of the 5 points of Calvinism. Tell me about your views on dispensationalism. Like these kinds of things cause the Christian church to fracture very, very much. And I see the same kind of patterns on the left. I actually saw a TikTok early this morning where a young man was saying that he's deconstructing and he's politically moving to the left. And he's like, there's a lot of evangelicalism on the left. I see y'all over here, and there's a lot of evangelicalism here. And I was like, yes, this is a thing that I've been saying for a long time. Yes, I'm glad I'm not the only person who sees it. And I think that video had like hundreds of thousands of likes. It resonated with a lot of people. And I know I've done a very poor job of communicating why that frustrates me so much. This needing to make smaller and smaller tents and only associate and organize with people who are exactly like you. This desire for political purity instead of theological purity. This fear of contamination from associating with and working with somebody who has different viewpoints than you. Right? The kind of self-righteousness of like, well, my beliefs are clearly the right ones, and I don't want to associate with people who aren't as evolved and elevated as me. Right? That propensity for people on the left to call folks that they don't agree with shit libs. The use of liberal as an insult when we all should be aligned in fighting fascism. Again, I say that as an anti-capitalist. Yes, I recognize that puts me on Trump's list. I've been saying I'm an anti-capitalist for 2.5 decades. So nothing new there. I'm not fucking scared of these fuckers. Anyway, so, right, like I am perfectly willing to organize with a neoliberal if they are actually fighting fascism. And I made a video the other day where I was like, I'm really frustrated at people on the left who don't seem to understand what solidarity is, and definitely say that they want working class solidarity, but then they turn their noses up at anybody who actually is in the working class, and they don't understand the politics, the belief, the worldview, and the struggle of working class people. Right? This group of folks over here on the left, again, screaming for working class solidarity, but then they turn around and call the working class normies and shit libs and say they like refuse to organize with people who are marching with a latte on a Saturday, or like, God forbid, get a permit for their protest. So I've been really struggling with this for a long time, since before the election, right? Obviously, as somebody who was willing to engage in harm reduction voting and compromise my own political beliefs in order to vote for a presidential candidate who, was not a literal fascist tearing down the White House. Okay, I'm gonna take it down a little bit, get a little worked up. So I'm really frustrated at the lack of solidarity, the fact that I think a lot of us don't really understand what solidarity means. And, in some ways that's understandable because we live in a highly individualistic society, and the government has done a really good job at undermining solidarity, undermining the labor movement, undermining organizing and community building. Right? When we don't have community infrastructure, when we don't have solidarity with each other, we don't know how to support each other. It's much easier for the government to control and exploit us. And then also it benefits capitalism very, very much to have us in a hyper-individualistic, hyper-consumer culture. So it makes sense. It makes sense that a lot of us struggle with the concept of solidarity. So I just want to read a little bit from Snyder here, and I just want to plug his book. One of the things that I appreciate so much about this chapter in Snyder's book is that he's talking about how you can't really have freedom all on your own. It is not something that can be achieved by the individual. Our hyper-individualistic culture undermines solidarity and makes us less free. So let me read just a little bit of what Snyder has to say here. Freedom is the value of values, but it does not stand alone, nor can a free person. The practical recognition of these philosophical truths is solidarity, the fifth form of freedom. Young people can become sovereign and unpredictable thanks to the care of others. The time needed to care for them can be organized only by common effort. As young people grow older, they need to be able to move out of school, out of the house, into futures that they can imagine and shape. Even rebellion should be nurtured. Their mobility begins with their own initiative, but also requires the work of previous generations. Solidarity is not just a pleasant cloud of good intentions. It is a necessary component of a working project of social mobility. In the absence of solidarity, such a project will turn against itself and toward racism, pseudo-populism, the politics of eternity, post-imperial immobility. If the goal is not opportunity for all, some will be satisfied when others are still more immobile. The sad facts of American history bring this home. Solidarity closes a circle. None of the things that we need to become free, including knowledge, can we produce by ourselves. The most fundamental truths, the ones about ourselves that allow us to see the world, we must owe to others. To be free, each of us needs the truth, but factuality requires institutions as well as risk takers. If freedom is the value of life, one of its forms is the self-conscious labor of making freedom possible to others. Solidarity is the guiding light of a land of the free. Solidarity is the mark of a just person. Our values differ, as they should and must. Freedom is the value of values because it is what allows that difference to reside in us and in the world we make around us. Each of us has the right to a freedom that allows us to learn and to choose and to combine values. We are not the same, but in the most essential sense, we are equal. Okay, last bit here. Like freedom in general, freedom of speech requires declarations made by individuals and accommodations made by some people to others. These individual capacities to declare and accommodate are sovereignty. Their application in society is solidarity. Without solidarity, without protection of free speakers, and without the support of institutions that enable listening, freedom of speech, like freedom itself, becomes an empty slogan. Without solidarity, freedom of speech becomes a parody of itself, used by its oligarchical enemies as a slogan to enforce their own dominance and to undermine freedom as such. One powerful image of a free speaker is that of the courageous witness to suffering. And this is quite right. In my experience, though, people who take courageous stands have friends in the background. Those who testify about atrocities have support. And for testimony to be recorded and archived, a surprisingly large number of people have to cooperate. The effectiveness of a historical witness depends on the quiet work of many others. Gosh, I could just keep reading. This book is really good. It's short, y'all. You should definitely go get it. I guess I just want to say here, as we continue to organize, how can we lean into the concept of solidarity, understanding that it is requisite for us to be successful? What does it look like to experience the discomfort of having to embrace solidarity in a culture that is hyper-individualistic, that has done its best to undermine our obligation to each other? What would it look like for us? to really dig deep and embrace solidarity as a movement.